I see, Leanne, that you're there. Are you the host from KW to this meeting?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Are you the host, or are you just here to listen in?
No, I'm just here to listen in.
Okay.
I'm always early.
Well, 1 minute before I start, so you're not that early.
That's true. Would I be the only one in this car?
I have no idea. I give this talk to everybody, and if you're the only one, you're going to be a very lucky woman, is all I can tell you. Because there are prizes.
Oh, there are prizes, so that means I get them all?
I think so. I may be wrong. It looks like it's going to be you and Kelly now going to be the only ones with prizes.
Yeah. That's funny. No, I think they're coming in.
Yeah. Can you, Leanne, can you see on your screen right now the share screen document?
No, I see your office.
Okay.
Now I see it.
Excellent.
I think I know you from many moons ago.
Is that a good or bad thing?
I used to work with Lori Phillips.
Oh, yeah, then you do know me, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I take it your move was a good one.
Yes.
Good.
I left her in, I think it was like 2012, 2013.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a while ago. So yes, your name looked familiar.
All righty.
Yeah. Yes. I'll have to call you back. I'll have to call you back. Thank you. Do you want to get the insurance on the refrigerator?
I don't know.
Okay.
I can't get the audio to work. I can't hear a thing.
We hear you, Vicky.
Oh, and she's not happy. She's not even happy a little bit.
And Vicki, if you can hear me, we're at 12 participants, and it's 5:03. For everybody who's listening, I'm Glen Kimball, and I'm going to start, but I'll start when I'm given either the go ahead, do it now, or I'll start at a specified time. And what people are still coming on board, like every meeting that we have at my law firm, we use a 10-minute rule for whatever it's worth, but we will end on time no matter what, if that helps. By the way, for those of you listening, and I'll say this once more later on, this is going to be a little different than any seminar you've ever seen, in the sense that it's participatory, in the sense that if you want to win something that you probably will like the gifts, there are 3 of them, you just have to pay attention, and it'll be explained to you in a little bit what those are. So if you wait patiently here, it's probably not a bad thing.
Glenn, thank you so much for being on with us tonight. I'm Dana. I'm one of the co-chairs for our education committee. I also run our productivity coaching program. So we do have quite a few new agents that are joining us tonight. So if you wouldn't mind, while we wait a few more minutes, can you possibly just share what errors and omissions is, why it's important? Because I think that would be something that would be really helpful for some of our new agents that maybe aren't as familiar with errors and omissions.
Well, at the risk of putting myself out of business, I will give you a little of an explanation on that. So for those of you who are new to this game, you are professionals. You are real estate professionals, and there is a standard of care that you have to meet. And so rather than someone who's driving a truck who hits someone with their negligence, your negligence are called errors and omissions. And you're going to be considered when you do what you're doing against whether or not you did what you should do, based either under the RELRA, which is the Real Estate Licensing and Registration Act, or the related regulations, or the New Jersey counterpart to it. And really, errors and omissions are rather simple. They are when you do something that the rules say you should have done something else, or you should have done something more, then there will be a claim. Now, the unfortunate aspect of that is you are also in America. And in America, there's a simple premise that if I have something that's gone wrong for me, it can't be my fault, it's got to be someone else's. And so you're going to be sued no matter what. And today I will talk about a variety of cases where I've been involved in representing realtors where someone's made accusations against them of where they have liability. And there are going to be instances when I tell you the story and you're going to be dumbfounded by why they committed an error or an omission. And in some instances, I may surprise you by telling you how we were successful in getting people out. But what we're really trying to do is to avoid errors and omissions altogether. And I've been defending realtors for 33 years now. I've had well over 5,000 cases. And during that time, there are very few instances in the last 5 years where the case I see, whatever it may be, because I have about 175 of them at any given time, I've probably seen it 10 times. So they start to have sort of common appearances. So today is not a deep dive. Today is I'm going to cover a lot of things. And you find that there are problems that arise in disclosure and in communication. Now, communication is a broad item, but in the end, I'm going to tell everybody that it's actually communication that's probably the single most important thing. If you communicate clearly and you say what you mean and mean what you say, you're going to find that you're going to be far better off than if you don't. And communication, I'm sort of stealing my own thunder, involves also covering your butt. And we're going to talk about that because you can do CYA and marketing at the same time. And by that, I mean to say that you can be providing the record that says you told someone something without alienating them, if you do it in a way that looks like you're actually doing it for their interests and not to cover your butt. And that is the key. I used to teach this on how people could take steps to keep from being sued. In fact, I used to start my seminars off by saying, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to make sure you never get sued, listen to what I have to say. Of course, if you really needed to do all the things I told you, you'll never sell any real estate either. Well, I understand the practical reality is you want to sell real estate and make money, but you should do it smart, because there's a ton of people that do it smart, do it right, and don't get sued. And oh, by the way, there are a ton of people that do it smart and get sued, because you can't stop the crazies from suing you, but you can win when they do. Now, granted, you don't want a lawsuit, but if you're going to have a lawsuit, you just assume win it. So if everybody's okay, I kind of want to start. Does everybody see that I have the screen up that tells you that today's errors and omissions? Good. So let's get right down to brass tacks. That's me, for those of you who can't see. I was going to block me off. I know I sometimes show up a little differently, but that's me, and that's the lies about who I am. So let's start with a little bit of erudite English class. And this is from A Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, and it was the age of foolishness, and so on and so on and so on and so on down there. And that's really what real estate's all about right now. Sometimes you're in a period like we've just gone through that hopefully isn't ending, but probably is slowing down, where you could just say, I'm selling something, and it's already 3 people want to buy it at 110%, and they have escalation clauses and all sorts of things. And those create a whole bunch of problems. And then there's the time when you don't have a lot of work. From 2009 to 2013 was kind of bare bones, not a lot of real estate going on. And that has a new set of problems. So why don't I start by telling a story about each one of those problems, about the best of times and the worst of times. I'll talk about the worst of times first, because that goes with my personality. So you're a realtor, it's 2009, and you're selling an end unit townhouse in a development that has something like 600 different units, and your end unit townhouse is no different than the other 65 of them that are for sale right now. And it's a hot August day, and it's a Sunday, and you're doing an open house, and nothing's selling because it's 2009. And by the way, 2009 may come back, but nonetheless, here you are sitting there between 1 and 3, and in walks the ideal family. Mom, dad, 2 little kids. They don't bring the dog, they don't bring the cat, but they make sure you know they have one. And they come in and they say things that are like music to your ears. Hi, we really like this place. Oh, we also don't have a realtor. Would you be a dual agent? I sure will, she says. We'll give you a full offer. We've got one problem. What's that problem? Well, we need to be in within the next 30 days. We got 2 little kids, and we want to get them started with school. Mom's doing all the talking, and the agent, who knows that we're in a really bad time, is actually loving this. Yes, I'll be a dual agent. Yes, I could do that. So prepare an agreement. We're going to need a deposit check. Some of the facts I make up because this is a true story, so I have to hide a little bit. But obviously, if you're not sure if I'm making them up, you can Google it. You'll find this case for sure. So they say, fine, we don't have a check, but we'll get the check to you and we'll fill this out. We'll fill out all the other documents, and they go their merry way. The agent calls up the seller. The seller is a recently divorced mom with her own 2 kids. She's excited about this, and it's really great. It's going to work out just fine for them. So anyways, the process begins, and in fact, there is an inspection that's performed within the requisite time, 10 days, let's say. But the one problem is they get the agreement back, but they don't give the check. So she calls up the husband and says, you didn't send me the check for the deposit. And he says, I'm in Houston. I'm not going to be able to get it to you. Yeah, I do all the finances. I can't get it to you. So I'll get it to you at the end of the week. So the agent calls up the seller and says, hey, should we keep this on the market? No, let's just push them. Another week goes by, still don't have the check. At this point, agent calls the seller up and says, I've got to, I think we should do something. And the seller says, no, by chance, I'm going to be in the same school district still. I was at a school function. I met mom, the loveliest lady. Just try to do whatever you have to do into it. Well, needless to say, we go to closing. We get to the day of closing and still no check. But they figure, they've done everything right. Now, here's the interesting thing. So the seller says, I have to move out, does everything they're supposed to do, gets everything out, cleans it all up, and has a couple air mattresses to stay there that night before they go to closing the next day. Everything's already moved out. So it's early in the morning. How early, I'm not quite sure. And she's upstairs and her kids are in their bedrooms on their air mattresses. And she hears a jiggling of the door downstairs. She goes running down there. And on the other side of the door is a man carrying incendiary devices, which is a nice way of saying stuff like lighter fluid and things like that. And he was trying to light the door on fire. It was the buyer husband who gets caught by the police when she comes across him. He runs, drops everything. And we find out that he had lost his job, hadn't told his wife anything, and then essentially figured if he burned it on the day of closing, well, we can't buy this house because it's not what we wanted, and figured he'd buy some time. Crazy as this may sound, you will find that he's actually doing some time. I'm not sure if he's still doing time, but nonetheless, that happens. So, of course, the realtor gets sued. Of course, it should be the realtor that gets sued. The realtor caused this, didn't it? Caused what, you're saying? What the hell did the realtor do? The realtor did absolutely nothing wrong, except for they said, if you'd done your job right, I would have had my giant deposit check, and they never gave it to me. So I want at least that from you. Now, we win. We win because we have a single stinking text that says, I think we should put this on, relist this. And the text back says, no, I'm okay with it. Without that text, we pay $40,000. Now, we'll talk more about this case later on. I tell this story because as you hear the story, you think, how the hell would the realtor be sued for that? And all I can tell you is the realtor can be sued for it because anybody can be sued. They teach in law school, they say you can sue a ham sandwich if you want to. So you don't want to be sued whether you are a ham sandwich or not. So let me go the other side of the good times and bad times that are before us. We're now at present day. Also a real case, but I will alter it ever so slightly. And you have a client that has $1 million+ home in Villanova. And it gets, it's going to be actively pursued. It goes on the market in sometime early summer. And within a matter of 12 minutes, you've got 13 full price offers and a whole bunch of contingency-free types of offers, and some with the escalation clauses that say, I'll pay, whatever it is over it. And so they eventually elect the person who paid the most and had also no contingencies. No contingencies. So it goes to closing. Now, by chance, the sellers have a little bit of a problem getting stuff out. They get everything out, but there's a problem. A truck breaks down and they can't get everything out. And so they get permission to store stuff in the garage for one day. And on the day they go to have it collected, they're not actually doing it themselves. They're just making sure it all gets taken and doesn't get destroyed. They notice that there's an inspection going on. Now, I doubt very much that that inspection was spontaneous, that some inspector was walking by and the buyer said, hey, can you inspect our home? No, I suspect that buyers all along knew they were going to inspect the stucco. Of course they were going to inspect the stucco. Stucco, everybody sues for stucco. You're selling a stucco house, you've got problems right away. If there's stucco on the house, you need to make sure that that buyer has every opportunity to have that inspected, and not inspected by just a general inspector, but by an inspector who is going to do invasive testing. And if you don't want to do it, you better have a lot of writing that says, we think you should, or you're going to have a problem. In this case, these people knew full well that there was going to be this inspection, and they sue the sellers when they find out that there's something wrong with the stucco. The sellers only lived there 2 years, and they said, listen, we had no problems with the stucco. We don't know anything about it. And they get sued. And guess who else gets sued right along with them? The buyer's agent, who helped put together this deal with no contingencies, and the seller's agent gets sued right along with them. And everybody going into this thought this will be a piece of cake. There's no contingencies. So what could they have done differently? Well, if you're the buyer's agent, you needed to CYA. You needed to write to your clients and say, it is not a good thing to to purchase a home without appropriate inspections, and in a stucco home, an invasive water test or moisture test is necessary. Necessary. And your decision not to is predicated upon your assessment that yours would be the accepted offer by making it free and clear of all these contingencies, including this inspection. We understand that, but that comes with risks, and we want to make sure you know that we are on record. We, as in me, the agent, me, the brokerage, are on record to say this is not a wise decision, even if you lose this property. Why do you write this? You write this because, in truth, they're not going to listen to you. They already know that. You're writing it to cover your ass. Oops, I said, see, I'm trying not to swear because I'm going to be honest with you. I don't normally do Zoom things. I like interactive things. I'm glad I'm seeing people's faces. It would really be disappointing. And Elena, at least I'm seeing your really pretty picture, so I'm pretending you're there and you're paying attention. I'm sure she's in another room. So anyways, let's get started. These are the two stories that get you started in saying, wow, we can be sued. Why are we being sued all of a sudden? When I first started being a real estate lawyer, the agreements of sale were 4 pages, 2 pages about both sides, you know what I mean, 2 pages of paper, pieces of paper. So why are you getting sued? Especially you have seller's disclosure comes in 1996, and it says seller alone is responsible for these disclosures. You would think you'd never get sued, and yet you're getting sued more today than you ever were before because of claims of errors and omissions. And that's in part because there's been a change in the law. I mean, when a long while back, it used to be the buyer beware. You buy a house, you get what you get. Too bad. Seller's saying, the moment you take my deed, I'm done. And that's it. The problem is that there were too many people that were defrauding other people, and they finally said, you know what, we're going to have to do this. And here's the other problem. At the same time they switched to buyer beware, we also had clear erosions in concepts that really matter to you guys. So let me tell you those really quickly. I very rarely get into this part of the law, but I want to make sure you hear about it. So negligence is, I make a mistake. I tell you that it's got public water, and it turns out it has a well. and you know the well's going to go dry the moment they buy it. That's a mistake. You didn't do it on purpose. Fraud, on the other hand, is when you look on one side and you look on the other and you say, okay, you asked me if there's water in the basement. No, there's no water in the basement. And you know there is. That's fraud. And you also have consumer protection laws, which have expanded. And I'm going to talk about that for just a moment. It's kind of important. And the other thing is, lawyers that used to do car accident cases, they had tort reform in car accident. They all have to do something. Why the hell not sue realtors? And you have a lot of people doing that. So that's it. And we're just a litigious society. There's just no way around it. So today, finally, I'm going to tell you what we're talking about: legal trends impacting real estate communications in general, disclosures, real estate firms. Oh my God, that's terrible. You'll be asleep before I get to the end of it. Let's change it just a little bit. We'll get rid of forms. I really won't. I will talk about them a little bit. And we'll do prizes instead. So for those of you who are listening, you're going to have to put on your thinking caps at some point. Now, what are we talking about? Prizes. Gives us, who cares about small things? I don't. So we're going to give you gym bags. They're in your offices somewhere. They've already been delivered. And in those gym bags is a nice O'Connor Kimball mug with candy in it, and an umbrella, and the bags themselves. And I play basketball twice a week, and I love taking my bag and showing everybody that OCK is out there and thriving. But even that, I'll be seeing you guys go and dock in 2 seconds if I don't give you something more. So each bag will have booze. You all look like alcoholics. I mean, I'm just going to be perfectly frank with you. I was told by Vicky that every one of you has a problem, and actually at the end, the last 5 minutes is someone from AA just here to talk to you for a couple minutes. But to help you along, each of these has either a widow chain. We usually do Woodford Reserve. I don't know why this caught my eye. That's the crappiest of the bottles. Then there's Crown Royal. You can't go wrong with that. And then there's Johnny Walker 18. Now, I have to be honest with you. We normally give you Johnny Walker Blue. But because you guys are new to this, you got the 18. Truth be told, I like it better than the Johnny Walker Blue. But if you are stupid enough to have me here the next time, you'll see a Johnny Walker Blue. So how the heck are you going to win it? Well, I'm going to tell you, any of you guys, none of you guys are going to win, because pretty women only win with me. I'm just going to be as plain as I can be about that, and that's fine. No, I'll even let the guys win. What the hell? I don't care. So I'm going to ask you questions. And the first person, and I don't know, this is the one problem I don't know how the answer is. So you may have to be, like, you raise your hand. So you may all have to, oh my God, you may all have to show yourselves. Let me see if I can see everybody. And then I'll just point to the person and say your name. And if you have it and you're right, you get to pick a bag. You don't know which bottle of booze is in it. The Johnny Walker, you can re-gift so easily. The other two, not as much. Now, Crown Royal, you can re-gift that. You'll find a way to do it, though. So having said that, pay attention, because I'm going to ask you questions. And if someone gives me the right answers, then we move on. So I told you there's negligence, fraud, and consumer protection laws. I want to talk about one of the most important things that I can today, and that is that I practice in New Jersey and I practice in Pennsylvania. And like A Tale of Two Cities, where I originally spoke about, I want to tell about the Tale of Two States. Up until 3 years ago, this was my favorite slide. It shows everybody enjoying living in Pennsylvania. They're hunting, they're fishing, they're just doing all sorts of great things, because Pennsylvania is a great state. In Jersey, on the other hand, I have as black, because it's a terrible state. The law is terrible. And so all I can tell you is to practice real estate in PA used to be something I would say gladly. You've got a lot of protections that are there for you. That sounds like I'm building up to a disappointment, and I am. So right now, we've had a change in the consumer protection law. It's from late last year. So consumer protection laws are there to protect consumers. And so in Pennsylvania, We have the Unfair Trade Practices and Consumer Protection Law that now is interpreted that if you, as a real estate agent, say something that is material to the transaction and you are wrong, you are liable. Now, what if they say, is there water in the basement? And you turn to the seller, is there water in the basement? And then she says, no, there's no water in the basement. You're liable if you're wrong. So how do you avoid that? Well, either don't tell them anything, which you're not going to get away with, or you better start doing things in a way that protect you. You cover your ass. You write an email. You asked me about if there's water in the basement. I asked the seller, and quote, the seller said they've never had any water in the basement, end quote. You're not going to be held liable. You're relating what the seller said because it's truthful that the seller told you that, and then you carbon the seller if that's who you represent. Dual agency is a little bit more tricky. We'll talk about that a little bit. But the idea behind it is, I'm jumping ahead because communication is the important piece of this puzzle. You need to understand that if you say it and it's wrong, say it or write it, or you omit something that you had an obligation to tell. You say you fail to tell them something you know about the property that's bad, then you've got liability. You've got liability under the Consumer Protection Law. And previously, it wasn't necessarily that way. They had to prove that you knew that it was wrong. In New Jersey and in PA, you don't have to prove that. This is very bad for real estate agents. That's why I wrote that, so it'll remind you. It's very bad because even when you don't know that you're wrong, you can still be liable. You say, well, all right, so don't I have errors and omissions for this? And the answer is maybe yes and maybe no. If there's no insurance coverage, that may mean that when you get sued, it comes out of your pocket. And I don't know about you, but if I went to my wife and said, oh, by the way, I just got sued for it. We're going to have to stop feeding the kids for 3 years because we don't have any money. We're going to have to pay off this lawsuit. It isn't something you want to be in. So recognize that coverage is the important thing. Now, I'm not always the bleak person that I've been. Consumer protection laws are designed to put the consumer at even on an even playing field. There's still some good defenses. One of the most important differences between black and terrible New Jersey, where I practice, and Pennsylvania, where I practice, is this. In New Jersey, if you're found to have violated the Consumer Fraud Act, that's what they call it, it's automatically tripled. So if you have a $20,000 claim against you, it's $60,000. And it's automatically, attorney's fees are awarded. So whatever they cost to sue you, you pick up the tab. So it's a $60,000 raise on that. And by the way, the lawyer was $50,000, $110,000 for a $20,000 mistake. Not where you want to be. I know, by the way, it's a jury deciding it, and that's not always the best of things. In PA, on the other hand, unfair trade practices claims, the consumer protection law here, are actually in front of a jury, not jury, in front of a judge, and they are very conservative. And they have discretion on whether they can triple it, up to triple it or not, and they have discretion on whether or not to award attorney's fees. And that's helpful, very helpful. But you don't want to say something that you don't know the answer. If you call up a government body and say, hey, is this zoned for horses? Where is your property? Property's at 123 Main Street. Well, our ordinance is you can have 1 horse per acre. So this is a 4-acre property. It has a beautiful horse barn right on the property line with someone else. And you go to the buyer and say, yeah, you can have 4 horses. And they say, great, we're going to buy this. And they bring their 4 horses, they put them in the barn, and someone knocks on their door and says, what the hell are you doing with those 4 horses in that barn? Well, the ordinance says that you can put 1 horse per acre. Yeah. But that barn, when it was built, required a variance. And that variance was a restricted use that it could not house any kind of animals. Get the horses out of there. You asked the wrong question, you got the wrong answer, you gave the wrong information, and you get sued. Maybe you shouldn't ask the question at all. Maybe you should handhold your client and say, listen, Borough Hall, municipality, if you're outside of Philly, if in Philly, you'll never get the right answer, it won't matter anyways. You say, why don't we do this together? We'll call them up, we'll talk, you can ask the questions because I may not know what you want in follow-up. And some people will take you up on it. Some will say, I'll make the call myself. And then you put it in writing. Dear so-and-so, you had real concerns about this with regard to whether or not you could build on this property or if there was any height restriction. As we agreed, you're going to contact the Philadelphia. I understand that that's handled by zoning, the zoning, blah, blah, blah. And you might even give them the telephone number. Please let me know what they tell you. Now, all of that looks like you're trying to be helpful. What you're really doing is covering your butt. I haven't given anything away yet. I wonder when that happens. So this is to tell you that in Pennsylvania, you now have to be far more careful in what you say. What you say matters. Communication matters. And when you're communicating, who you're dealing with is important. Now, I'm going to give you a secret. I'm going to tell you a secret that I know. My secret's a real simple one. Your clients lie to you. Sellers lie, buyers lie. Title agents often lie, and everybody else lies. The other agents lie. And I'm just going to tell you, that's human nature today, and it's a bleak and terrible thing. But I have 5,000 cases where I don't know I have a single one where someone didn't lie, and many where no one told the truth. And that's unfortunate, but it's true. So you've got to start to figure out, because as Americans, we're gullible. You know, for those of you who are young, at the top here, we've got Milli Vanilli, who apparently were lip syncing because they couldn't sing a note, but they got whatever the award was, Emmys or whatever it is. By the way, for those of you who are not showing your faces, this is about the time when I would start showing my faces, because you have to raise your hand to get my attention if you want to try to win what's coming. And by the way, unfortunately, and by the way, you know it's going to be a prize because I'm showing the big prize on the right-hand side. If you notice this Pinocchio, when people are lying, their noses don't get bigger, so you don't get to see it, or they don't be like in the movie Liar, Liar, where you can see it because it's so funny every time he lies. Not everybody lets you know they're a liar. So in the center there, we don't know if she's a liar. She doesn't look like a liar. She looks sweet and innocent. Now, this is not for a prize. Does anyone know who that sweet and innocent woman is?
Judy Garland.
Now, this is not for a prize, but I want to hear what you say. Marquis, who is it? I think it's Marquis. I hope I said that right.
So someone said Judy Garland, and she does look like her, but you know what? She looks like a grown-up Shirley Temple to me.
She is a Shirley Temple Black. Now, for those of you who want to raise your hands, be ready, because I'm about to ask the right question. This is for the marbles. Interestingly enough, she was a child star in the 30s, and she one day decided to be done being a child star while she was still in her prime. I think she was like 12. But she went on and became an ambassador to 2 different countries on behalf of the United States. Being neither one of them. So I want to know, is this a Keller Williams or is this a Century 21? You don't have cell phones? You're not looking up the answer? What are you people, nuts? Look it up. You get booze on the line. I've never had this happen before where I can't give it away. I'm
How
taking
about
that.
Ghana and Czechoslovakia?
Very good, Paul. Who's writing this down? Dana, you're going to be in charge of that. All right. So Paul, you've got a bag. You got to go see Deidre or Vicky to do it. It's somewhere in your offices. Although I did see Vicky drinking earlier, so maybe 2 of them are in your office. I don't know. All right.
Okay.
Good for you. Yes, it is.
Thank you.
It is. Well, I'm having trouble. There it is. That's her when she was a kid. And yes, she was Ghana and Czechoslovakia. when I don't get the answer, I eventually have to say which of these two countries no longer exists, but we don't have to say that. So let's talk about modes of communication. This is so crazy. This is how old this slide is. This is a iPhone 2, I think. And I keep it because it's reminiscent of good times in my life when I was much younger. But that's what's hurting you guys. In so many ways, you're going a million miles an hour and you're not covering all bases. And you're going to have to start to figure out how you can make sure your iPhone isn't going to be the reason why you're going to have troubles. Because if you say something to someone, they remember what they remember. Sometimes they remember it because they know they don't want to remember the truth. And sometimes they just heard it differently. They were like you. They had a baby crying over here, driving the car, and they were talking to you and they didn't hear it all. So stuff has got to be memorialized. It's got to be written. It's got to be written. Texting. These digits were not made for texting. And so I hardly ever, now I know you can talk more into it now and maybe that helps. But when you text, you tend to be far more cryptic and you don't therefore provide clarity. Clarity is the essential to safety. So you must say what you mean and mean what you say. When you write what you're doing, memorialize it at the time and make sure you say it clearly, concisely, but without a doubt, you say what was said. Dear buyer, you told me this. I want to remind you of that you have to do this or that so that down the road they don't say, hey, I don't remember that. Well, here's the email that says you did. You got to be careful when you're writing. If you're talking one-on-one, it's up to your memories. If you're talking on the phone, you may not be paying attention. You're talking in a group, everybody hears something a little differently. You're writing a text, you at least have it written, but you better write it smart. Writing an email is really the ideal. Emails are great. Chain emails are better still, because what you always want to do when you're covering your butt and you're saying, I want to tell you that this has this characteristic, can you also give me an answer on this question? The second part of it may be just your way of getting them to respond, because if they respond, that means they read the first part. Then you have the proof. Now, don't get rid of your email. Maybe even print it out. If it saves your bacon, you'll love it. So that's important. Content. I have to read this. Oblige me for a second. Oh, there's a prize here. So I would pay attention. This is Jack London. And in this one paragraph, you have the essence of everything that you need from what he writes. But before he could cut I can't tell what it says. It was his own fault, or rather his mistake. He should not have built the fire under the spruce tree. He should have built it in the open. But it had been easier to pull the twigs from the brush and drop them directly on the fire. Now the tree under which he had done this carried a weight of snow on its boughs. No wind had blown for weeks, and each bough was fully freighted. Each time he had pulled a twig, he had communicated a slight agitation to the tree and an imperceptible agitation, so far as he was concerned, but an agitation sufficient to bring about the disaster. High up in the tree, one bough capsized its load of snow. This fell on the boughs beneath, capsizing them. This process continued, spreading out and involving the whole tree. It grew like an avalanche, and it descended without warning upon the man in the fire, and the fire was blotted out. Where it had burned was a mantle of fresh and disordered snow. The man was shocked. It was as though he had just heard his own sentence of death. It's 100, I think it's 40 degrees below zero. He's already fallen into water, and he was freezing, and he just got the fire started. And he knows he's gonna die, and you see it. And this is all small words, none of the big, freighted maybe, but other than that. That's how you should write when you're trying to communicate with people. Just keep it simple. Hemingway. 4-word sentences, every word 4 letters. Keep it simple, but but say what you mean and say it with clarity. That, I can't say how much that has saved everybody's bacon. So what's the prize? Can anyone point out the error in this page? Well, the error is it's not from the Call of the Wild. What's it from for a prize?
To build a fire.
Yes, Sari. Sari?
Yep.
I think they put the wrong letter at the end of your name there. Oh, that's okay though. You're gonna have that name. There we go.
Thanks. I appreciate it. I'll let my mom know.
All right. Great job though. All right, so you want to convey information provided by others by quoting them, not saying it. There is nothing dumber than saying, when they say, so tell me about the seller's this or that about the property. Well, we looked into it and we this. No, you didn't buy the property with the seller. You don't own the seller. You own it with the seller. Don't buy their mistakes. If they say something, quote them, ascribe it to them. You are responsible for what you do. Why would you ever want to take on what the seller says as your own? So, clarity of writing. Relationship with attractive, active, early 20-something female. I'm an attractive, dynamic, active 20-something plus male who likes outdoor sports and working. Only interested in someone who can keep up with me. Serious responses only. And of course, the person writing this is none other than this fine fellow right here, which I'm not trying to make fun of him. I'm trying to make a point. Clear writing is not the same as advertising or embellishing. Clear writing is telling things truthfully, short, sweet, and whatever. And that's important. Clear writing in what you do. So be proactive. When you have a problem, and you will have problems, you need to understand that some problems are beyond your ability. Sometimes they're beyond my ability, but there are gradations. So there are some problems you just have to work it through because you just don't understand something. But in the beginning, go up the chain. If you have someone who's your mentor or someone that's your coach, you go to your coach, you go to your mentor, you go to Vicky or the broker or whoever it is. They go up because they may kick it up even further. And in many instances, it sometimes kicks to me where they'll say, hey, we have a problem. We don't know what to do. Many a time I've had to get in my car or in some instances, walk over to a closing. And usually that's because I'm now picking poisons. There's no good alternatives. We're going to try to pick the best alternative under the circumstances. But the problem that becomes the magnified problem is the one that doesn't get addressed early. So it's early assistance. And if you keep a good record, you can at least say what the problem is because you can show it. It kind of spiraled out of control and here's the reasons why. And maybe, just maybe, there's a solution there. Now, here's one of the things that a lot of you are going to have a problem with, and it's important for you to know this. When you're dealing with real estate transactions, they cover a period of time and they cover a wide array of different things, and they take time. And some problems have to be resolved. And sometimes you will try to help resolve the problems. And it's like quicksand. In the beginning, you can still stay out of it, but you think you're trying to help the situation and you get sucked into it. And by the time you realize you can't solve that problem yourself, you're almost over your head. So you need to understand when it's outside, sometimes it's your good intentions that cause your biggest problems. So there's nothing wrong. I got partners. I've been a lawyer for 33 years. I've got partners who I will call up and say, hey, I've got a problem here. I just want to see if I've got seeing this right. In the beginning, do a lot of that. And by the way, in the end, after 33 years, I still do a lot of it. All right. Seller's property disclosure. Let's talk about that for just a second. It used to be when they came out in 1996 with seller's disclosure, I used to say to people, don't touch it. Wear gloves, no fingerprints on it. Give it to the seller. And then when they give it, try not to touch it. Put it in an envelope, put it in a safe, and then get it over to the buyer somehow. And we were wrong. We were wrong because sellers were not providing adequate seller disclosure responses. Now, you're not here to tell them what they know. They know what they know. Their job is to convey it with clarity. So, for example, I tried a case many moons ago where the seller wrote, when it rains, water seeps into the basement. No one fixed it. Nothing happened. I mean, you think that's okay, right? Except for when the buyer buys the property, it got 6 feet of water with just about every rain. To this day, I've never understood that case, but nonetheless, it's true. And then they pull the records because this was out in Doylestown, and the fire companies out there sometimes do they remove the water, and they were like 10 times in 2 years. And I get the guy in a deposition, and I say, Mr. Seller, did you write down that when it rains, water seeps in? He goes, yeah, that's what happens. I said, well, there's 6 feet. Yeah, but it seeped in. 6 feet of water, and you didn't think it was worth asking? No one told me I needed to write it differently. Well, you should be telling people this. If it's not easily described, meaning they don't describe it with adequacy, you go back and you say, you really need to provide us the frequency better and the quantity better. It covers 6 feet of it whenever it rains with heavier rains, or it goes 2 inches. It covers this corner of the floor. It only happened 3 times in the last year. Something that is their numbers, their agent. Now I know that there's going to be a bunch of you who are going to say, yeah, but sellers don't want to tell that. First of all, in a seller's market, telling all is the right answer. The house behind mine, the people that they had financial troubles, they didn't fix anything. They had every problem under the sun, and they didn't fix any of it. And they could have disclosed every bit of it, and the people bought it sight unseen. And so when they came to me and they said, hey, I'd like you to help us with the seller's disclosure, tell them everything that went wrong with it. Tell them things that you think might go wrong with it. Tell them everything, because in a seller's market, they're not going to say no, and you're now protected. That's like a warm blanket, because it says, in essence, you don't have to worry because we disclose the living hell out of it. Someone says to me, well, wait a minute, why would I put down that the hose to the washing machine broke, 10 years ago? Well, what happened? Well, it broke and we were away, and it was 4 days, and we came back and there was 4 inches of water. But that wasn't a defect of the problem. That was a problem. And we bought the armored cords, and we've never had a problem since. Say, so what's the harm in saying that? Well, why do I have to tell it? So I'll tell you the reason why, because I have this case. When that 4 inches of water was there, it went up the side of the walls, and it caused a condition called efflorescence. And there was water problems after these people moved out. And they said, you never disclosed it. We can see there's been longstanding efflorescence. He goes, well, no, that was when I had the broken. Well, you didn't tell us about that. We don't know that. We don't believe you. So over disclosure is never the problem. So you're going to ask yourself, there's going to be a lot of times when all of you are going to say, you're going to be asked the question, do I disclose? And they'll tell you something. I don't care what it is. I don't care what it is. The answer is yes. Megan's Law, maybe, put that aside. You can't talk about criminal stuff. The things that they teach you, or that they should be teaching you to get your license, you can't put those in. But what you can do is anything else. If they're asking the question, they should do it. It should be complete. When it gets done, you take that back, you look at it, you make sure it's completed. Everything is completed. Everything makes sense. If they say public water, and then it asks about the questions about the well, and they're answering the questions about the well, you better get to the bottom of that, because I got to tell you something. Maybe it has no well and they shouldn't be answering it, or maybe it has public water and a well, in which case you better make sure it's clear. Over disclosure is never going to be a problem if it's accurate. Beware of those who won't be bothered with details. If you have sellers who are less than helpful, sometimes it's because they don't have it. Listen, everybody has the older woman or man. It's almost always a woman because men die first. but we're gonna have to wait on the social, that's gonna have to be my daughter, and she's down in North Carolina, and she's not gonna be up for 3 weeks, and then you don't know what to do because you want to put it listed, you want to give him the thing, and you want to get this started, but that's the case. That's a reluctance that's troublesome. So let me tell you how I recommend you do it. I mean, the best thing is ask daughter to come and take care of it. She's not gonna. So you say, all right, Mrs. Benson, let me ask you something. Do you have trouble writing? Yes. Is it that's the problem? Well, a little bit, yes. If I write this for you, I'm going to have to ask you to write at the end. I'm going to write that says, I merely wrote it for you, all of the content, and I'm writing that at the bottom. This was written by Glen Kimball at the request of Mrs. Benson, and I, Mrs. Benson, agree that all of the content I have read and approved because I was the one who provided it. Now, we used to teach you, you never write anything on it. But the reality is when you have Mrs. Benson type situations, there's not a lot you can do about it. And you may want to do it. Now, all I can tell you is ideally, you never want to have your fingers on that. But if you're going to do it, make sure that Mrs. Benson tells you these things in a way. Listen, there are going to be times when you're going to have trouble. When your client is blind, they are not going to be able to fill that out for you. And if they don't have someone who can assist them, and I wish I was making it up, but I've had 3 of those cases where, as a result of the blind person not being able to see it, they disclaimed essentially what was written on their behalf. So you have to make sure that there's proof. There's another person there that even listed that get to see it. Trust but verify. I am a lifelong Democrat, and yet I think Ronald Reagan had it 100% right. Trust but verify. You got to make sure that you aren't adopting someone else's mistakes, of whether be it the other agent or I'm supposed to look at the clock. Oh, it's almost time for me to be done, thankfully. By seller, by other agents, and by governmental authorities. So let me show you. These are the types of things you've got to be real careful about. Here it is. You don't want to be the source of your own downfall. This is an MLS. 2 homes for the price of 1. Possible rental in 1. Opportunities to live in the main home and rent guest house out. Let rent pay mortgage. And they buy it. And they put a renter in. And the town zoning officer knocks on the door and says, how long before you can get those people out? I assume they're not your in-laws because this was only zoned for an in-law suite. And that's why they had this. And this person put it in writing that this was a possible rental. So the person tells me, well, it says possible. So I said, no, that's not a possible rental. That's an impossible rental. And you're going to be paying money on that. You just shot yourself in the foot. And those are the worst kinds of ways to do this. If you're writing something, you better know what you're writing, and it better not be just made up because you want to make a sale. Oh my God, another one of these. Wow. 2-family waterfront investment property in desirable Sunrise Harbor. This is over Jersey. Beautiful views of the, I can't say the river, blah, blah, blah. Property is nestled in cove for great protection of your boat. Great rental history. Leases available on request to qualified buyers. Here it is. This is a property that's got 2 units. It's on the river. It has a boat dock. It's ideal. It's the only one in this development that is a 2 units. Guy buys it. Mr. Broad buys it. He decides he's going to fix up one side and get a renter, and then fix up the other and use the other for his family. He's in the process of fixing up the first side when the zoning officer, it's always seems to be the zoning officer, shows up and says, hey, this isn't zoned for 2-family. And he says, what are you talking about? When I bought this thing, they showed me leases that went back, a lease history since 1968. I'm just telling you, I'm the new zoning officer in this municipality, and you can't do it. Well, what do I need to do? Well, you're going to have to, I'm telling you right now, you're going to have to take out one of the kitchens. You're going to have to take out the fire, the stove and something else. So he does that. He goes, all right, he goes, okay. So then he does something kind of smart. He calls a lawyer up, says this. And unfortunately, he calls the wrong lawyer. And the lawyer has it for 6 months and doesn't do anything. And after 6 months, he finally says, hey, I need to get working on this. So he gets a new lawyer. He gets a new lawyer, not quite as bad as the first lawyer. He says, don't worry. This has been going on since 1968. The zoning code that has this kind of limitation was 1974. We're fine. And they go in to a zoning to get a, to be grandfathered in. It's called a special exception. Doesn't really matter. It's like a variance. And they can't fit all the people that want to oppose this guy having this grandfathered in. Everybody in the neighborhood, not one of them has a rental unit. And it turns out that as a rental units, everybody that seemed to stay there every summer were jerks. And all they did was make a lot of noise and cause all sorts of problems. And no one wanted them. And the zoning lawyer gets up and says, members of the thing, there's no doubt that since 1968, this has been treated as, and it turns out that the municipality even taxes it as 2 units and goes through all that real thing. And he sits down and he's like a proud peacock. Up stands the zoning officer and he says, they say, Mr. Zoning Officer, what are you going to do? He says, I'm going to ask a couple questions of Mr. Broad. Mr. Broad, are there 2 stoves in this right now? No. When did you remove the last stove? I did when you told me to. And was that more than 6 months ago? Yes. They abandon the use. They don't get grandfathered. That's all I have to say. They sit down and the zoning board says, you're right. They abandon the use. He says, well, I did what he told me to do. So what do? They sue the realtors. You guys put me in this predicament. You said it was 2-family and it wasn't. I had the listing on this. And for 3.5 weeks, the broker was right here next to me and the 2 agents were right there next to them. And I got to tell you, the problem with that case wasn't that all the things I told you, the problem was in the next part of this. Oh, it says a big prize. Does anyone want to help me say why there's a problem for the realtors in this particular instance? All of the things I just said are true. Anything that's going to undo us? We
Well, they
didn't lose, by the way,
guarantee.
but what was our
guarantee
biggest
that-
problem? Any thought?
Well, they put in their history of leases, great rental, so they already made statements they weren't sure of.
They didn't have a variance. They didn't have a legal variance.
Show you.
And before they made.
Don't worry, you'll
the
still get
statement,
it
they should
cheap.
have gone to the township.
that.
And
Category.
found out what was going on.
They went to the taxing authorities and they said it was 2-family because they were taxing it. But taxing authorities don't establish what you're legal for. It's a crazy case. We were going to win. Oddly enough, the reason why we didn't quite win is on the 4th week of trial, the judge comes out and says, it was me and the Weichert agent, and they said, can you come in here? And I said, well, plaintiff's counsel's not here. Well, that's what I want to talk to you about. He had had a mental breakdown because he knew he was going to lose his case, and he had borrowed $250,000 to pursue the case from his in-laws, and he knew he wasn't going to be able to do it, and he couldn't take the pressure of it anymore. So, but could you imagine having to sit next to me for 3.5 weeks? I mean, it's not so much that I have bad hygiene. It's the fact that you're not selling real estate when you're next to me. And that's important. I think I only have a few more things I want to say. Early detection of problems are the way to do it. Make sure that when you're writing your MLS, that it fits the property, that you're not just taking an earlier MLS and copying it over. It almost always will be wrong in some material way. Try to be sure to check as much as you can. Let me tell you something. You don't say, if you're selling outside of Philly, a lot of times you'll, maybe you buy a lot. A lot says that it's 1 acre. If it doesn't look like 1 acre, try to figure that out. You say, well, I don't know what 1 acre is. Well, it's a mathematical computation. It's 48,000 square feet, I think, or 43,000 square feet. And if you see that it's 50 by 100, that's not going to be 43,000. That's going to be 5,000. That's a problem. You'll see we got one of those survey cases. They said they had 3.2 acres. And the way that the buyer found out that that everybody was full of it is he went to Home Depot and said, listen, I want to put fertilizer on my lawn. So how big is your house? How big is your lot? You need 12 bags of this. Set it at 4 and go to it. He does it. He gets all the way done and he's still got 5 bags left because he didn't have 3.4 acres. He had 1.7 acres. And that's a problem. Don't supply information. This is me again saying it very simple, that you don't know the answer. You can't do it simply because someone told you. If you're going to supply it, you're going to say, the seller says, I talked to zoning officer so-and-so at X date at this time, and he said the following. You should confirm this yourself. That covers your butt. You gave them the information. If they don't confirm it, you're protected. I want to skip all this. We'll skip that, skip that. We already got through this. Oh, we're so close. I love septic. We'll skip stucco for the time being. I want to just add, and I don't care about deaths. You can't, you know. Everything in writing, contemporaneous notes, spell out everything. The more important, don't use shorthand because it's going to be a mistake. Record as matter of course daily. So you keep your, you know, if you're like, I use paper still. Whatever you use, make it so that it's permanent. Create a strong impression that you have good practices is really what it is. This was something we used to have people initial. It's not a bad thing to require. They don't make them much anymore. Write simply, clearly, write what you mean, mean what you write, and be complete. This is the most critical document in the case. If you keep it, you will avoid a lawsuit, and then you threw it away a year later. It doesn't do you any good. Save your files forever. It doesn't cost a lot to have it on there. And I don't know if it's .loop you guys use or whatever it is. When there's a problem, figure it out early. If it's over your head, bring in the right person. Kick it upstairs to your broker, your manager, your team leader, and be prepared to walk away. That's the hardest thing I'm going to say to you today is you might, in fact, have a situation where the only solution is to walk away. Walking away it doesn't mean abandon them. It means I can't do what you want me to do. You know, there's something I need to disclose and you're telling me I can't disclose it. If I can't disclose it and I have a duty to disclose it, I can't be representing you anymore. I have to walk away from this. And I'm going to have to say it's because we have a difference a difference with regard to what I can and can't do, and they're going to figure it out. So I want to keep that. This is the last thing I want to talk about. No, I'm going to skip that. Inspections. Don't just give a single inspector's name. That is a mistake. If you hear about one of your clients having a bad inspector result, pass it up the chain. If you guys use lists, you got to look at that list periodically and say, you know what, Fred keeps getting in trouble. Never, ever tell people that this is the inspector I like. It is, in fact, inspectors that have been involved in behalf of my clients in other instances, and they seem to have been pleased with the result. I have no reason to believe they didn't do a good job. You're not endorsing the person's inspection. You're simply saying this is what your other clients have told you. At least 3 choices, no matter what. And keep your relationship with your inspectors at arm's length. Don't let them buy you in because then they aren't helpful. This is what I like to see on your listings when you give them. Below is a listing of inspectors that have satisfied our other clients. We cannot assure you of the results of the performance of the inspector that you select, and you should satisfy your needs before selecting any inspector. You might want to satisfy yourself by asking them about past claims, confirm their insurance, review their contract. Does the contract limit their liability? And that's it. Should you attend inspections? If my partner were here, you would hear that we both disagree on whether or not you should attend an inspection or not. And all I can tell you is I think you should. I think you should not be a go-between. You should listen, and you should make sure your client's there and listen to what they have to say as well, to be sure. Look at that. I think I'm almost right on time. I'm not, I'm overtime, sorry. So with that, I open it up to any questions that anyone might have. There is one more bag left. Vicki, I'm going to leave it up to you on how you're going to select them. It doesn't have to be people here, or it can be people here. I don't care if you just say, you know, I like Karen the best, and I'm just letting her be the one. I don't care. But I missed one of the opportunities to select someone. So I'll leave it up to you, and I'll put the pressure on you. Oh, no, she can't be heard. Vicki, are you muted? Oh boy.
Can't hear you, Vicky. You're not on mute, but for whatever reason.
Oh, she is on mute.
No, she went off it.
Oh, yeah. Well, we have a list, I think, of everybody. So even if it's a name out of the hat at some point, that's all I can promise you, that someone will get that. I would love the Johnny Walker. That's really good scotch, but it's also good giving scotch. So unless anybody has any questions that you want to ask me, I'm happy to answer any questions. And the rest of you who want to get off the line, from my perspective, it's okay with me. But if you have a question where you say, yeah, Glenn, I got this problem.
If I have a question, if a owner, it's an older woman, and she and her daughter has the POA, but the woman is still capable, who fills out that seller's disclosure? The owner, or can the daughter do it since she has the POA?
So it's an excellent question, and it causes problems all the time where they say they didn't ask the owner, the POA did it, and the POA says, well, the realtor never told me that it should be the both of us. So I would tell you, if the person has competence, they have to make sure they have all of their information. And if the POA has independent competence and they're filling it out, they have to say so if it's the daughter who once lived there and there's still relevant information they have with regard to the condition of the property, then they have to write it. And if the mom, so they're going to have to check with mom on it. So if it's truly a POA that's brought about for convenience reasons, not incompetence reasons, then I think they both have to. Well, I guess any other questions? I hate asking questions at the end. I just want to get off when I'm like this, so I'm okay with that. So unless you hear anything further, thank you for having me here. And I hope someday, if you want, well, we can always give this was what we call a very on the surface type of discussion. What we do is we'll take some facet of it and we do a much more deeper dive, and we look at it at a more granular level, and we have a lot more examples of the way in which your other realtors in your circumstances have been caught in our very litigious web here. By the way, we don't lose all of our cases. I made it sound like we do. We actually, if you do most of the things we say, you have a really good chance of prevailing. But you need to do most of them. You can't just simply rely upon good luck. And there are lots of people that I've been here before, and I'll just tell you, they'll say to me, I've been doing this for 25 years, and I don't do any of those things, and I've never been sued. And I always say, then you're just lucky, because if you're doing it other than what I've just said, you're going to one day get sued. And I had one where they got sued, and she came to me and said, you brought me bad luck. Anyways, I
Glenn,
remain.
thank you so much. Is it possible, can you just put up the first slide with your info in case anybody did not see that one that has your phone
Sure.
and your email?
Yes,
And
please.
Paul, what is your last name, just so I can make sure we have that written down for your prize?
Coletti, Colletti. I'm part of Black Label, KW.
Thank you.
Oh, Black Label. That's the
Just like Johnny Walker.
Oh, I every time I see it, I think of Johnny Walker. All right, so here we go. Where the heck is it? Here we go. Stop sharing. I guess I have to reshare. So share screen.
We want to thank all you guys for being on tonight. Hopefully you found this helpful and useful. I think the biggest takeaway, definitely, if you're not sure, ask and keep a record. Those were my two big ahas.
Very much.
And thank you very much. Very informative.
Yeah, this is great.
So for our last prize, who has the closest birthday? Does anyone have a
There
birthday
you
this
go.
month?
I'm in December.
I'm December.
You got it. I'm in February.
Anybody an October baby? Any October babies? No? Any November babies? Me. All right, Leanne, you are the winner for prize 3.
Did I ever get this screen back up? I've been trying and all I do is press buttons. I'm not doing a very good job. Vicky
Yes.
has my information.
Yes, we do
Vicky-
see
Yes,
it.
it's here.
All right. More importantly, it's the picture is the more accurate part of who I am. Good. All right. Well, then I guess on that, I will let y'all go. Everybody, I hope you make a lot of money. And I'm not against you making mistakes because I need to work until I retire. So anyways, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much, Glenn. Hey,
Thank you so
guys,
much.
I'm going to email Tori and CC Vicky for your prizes. So you'll need to go to 1619 Walnut and pick up your prizes.
Okay.
Thank you guys
Great.
so much for joining us. Thank you, Glenn. And
Yep.
thank you, Vicky, for putting this all together. I really appreciate
thank you.
that.
Yeah.
Have a good night, guys.
You too.
You too.